excitedly, and they were talking about SSO. And that's one of the things I kind of spent a lot of time thinking about. I didn't want it to stop. But it did, fortunately. And it is 3 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. I just want to start by saying thank you for coming. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm really pleased to be in Charleston. I'm also really pleased to be in the USA as well. I've travelled to the States over many, many years. And I think as I was flying into Atlanta yesterday afternoon, looking out the window, it's a reminder what a beautiful country the States is. I mean, it's weird, but it's wonderful. So I'm really glad to be here. And also, talking about weird and wonderful, I'm now going to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes talking about OpenAthens. Okay, I am going to talk a little bit about where OpenAthens came from, which hopefully informs why we exist. And then I'm going to little sort of sneaky peek, a tiny peek into the future, what we might be thinking about into the future. Okay, so it's about 15 minutes of a chat, and then there's many questions you may or may not have. So I'm going to start with the history. So OpenAthens was 30 next year. It's quite exciting. If everything carries on as it is, we'll be here next year, I hope. We started in 1995 at the University of Bath Library. Now, I wasn't there. I've talked to people who were there at the beginning of OpenAthens, and that was librarians managing Excel spreadsheets with thousands of student names in column A, and then hundreds of journals in sort of row A1, whichever way around it is. And then in each individual cell, there would be cross-referencing usernames and passwords. And the student would ring up, so I've forgotten my password to The Economist. They'd ring up individual A's, forgotten their password, and it was a nightmare. There's a testament, I think, to the work of the librarians there, that they managed to solve that problem. And the way they solved that problem is the concept of a single set of credentials that allows you to log into any one of these digital journals that exist. So that's 1995. That was successful. Other universities heard about this. They partnered up. And when they got to about 7 or 8 universities in the UK using the service, they realised that it should probably become a shared service. So EduServe is created, which is a not-for-profit organisation where actually, for the benefit of the sector, OpenAthens was rolled out and made available to all the universities and ultimately colleges who wanted to use it. 2000, so that's 15 years later, there was a recognition for the National Health Service in the United Kingdom that problem of thousands of transient users, doctors, clinicians moving from place to place, hundreds of journals, that was the same problem. So OpenAthens started to work with the NHS. Then there was a recognition that this problem was not just UK-based, not just academic-based or medical-based, it was actually global. And with the support of a number of partners, but mainly EBSCO, OpenAthens has been able to go into different libraries in different parts of the world to start building and growing the service. The OpenAthens Federation was launched in 2013. I'm just going to talk very briefly about the word open. Sometimes it gets mixed up with sort of open access, but the open of OpenAthens refers to open standards. It refers to interoperability. It refers to our technology's ability to work with other systems. That's one of the things that we try. We are often described as a middleware in a very complex system. I'll come on to that complexity in a minute. And then 5 years ago, we merged with an organisation called JISC, another not-for-profit organisation in the UK. JISC's, it works in higher education and further education. It provides digital and data services to the sector, and its mission is there's that belief that education can transform lives or change lives for the better, and that technology can help change education for the better. And that's where we now fit in, and it's a very, very comfortable fit for OpenAthens. It's nested services to support. JISC primarily higher education, further education in the UK. OpenAthens is global. So that's the history. I joined about 10 years ago. I remember having a conversation. My dad taught at the University of Winchester, and he inveigled me into the library so I could have a conversation with the head librarian. He very kindly gave me an hour of his time. Quickly realised this was all quite new to me. My background at that point had been publishing. And he introduced me to the sense of community that exists within the library and that complex ecosystem and the nested solutions, these nested platforms that one sat on the other and the routes to get the information seemed really complicated to me at that point. So a lot of that definitely went over my head back then. And he said, when I asked him at the end, I said, if there's one thing, I'm joining OpenAthens, if there's one thing that I could do, what would you advise? And he said, work more effectively with the publishers. He said it slightly more directly, and he said it's sort of more Anglo-Saxon English, but that was the message that I took, work more effectively with the publishers. And hopefully, as I walk through this, you'll see that theme through OpenAthens and the way OpenAthens is developed. So I'm going to stay back, this is 2014, this slide, so very 2014 this slide, very, very busy. But there is a story here which I'm just going to pick through quite slowly. In the bottom left-hand corner, you have what definitely used to be called a patron, but I think is now often referenced as a user. So that's interesting, the way that has changed over the years. There's the user in the bottom left-hand corner, and in the top right-hand corner, there is a collection of digital resources. Now, just as an aside, the pandemic actually really helped me explain what I do to my family, because actually what we're talking about here is how do you remotely access digital resources? And if you look in that bottom, and again, the syntax of the screen, you've got the organisations, institutions on the left-hand side, and the publisher platforms on the right-hand side. And this was a piece of research that OpenAthens did. I had to present this something like 6 or 7 weeks into being there. This is a piece of work OpenAthens did, trying to understand what all those barriers and those obstacles are when a user is trying to access content. Location being one of the primary ones. It was very much about IP recognition back in the day. It wasn't about who you are, it's about where you were. And again, that's one of the fundamental changes that we've seen over the years. You've got things like usability and training. I think one of the great things that I've seen over the last 2 or 3 years is the rise of the user research librarian. Just someone really focusing on understanding that journey. And that's one of the things that OpenAthens tries to do, tries to kind of mitigate and support that journey. Login credentials, that's still a big thing. Things like device support or device pairing, that's something that I think has disappeared slightly. What we see coming through OpenAthens is most users access through Google Chrome, and that's irrespective of which device they're on. So that device, that problem has kind of gone away. The site experience makes me laugh. I mean, that was dreadful. So when the librarian at the University of Winchester was saying sort out the publishers, I think a lot of what he was saying is if you go to some of these websites, it's just almost impossible for a sort of institutional user to log in. That's definitely got better. Organisations like Seamless Access, if people are not aware of Seamless Access, you should seek out their work. They're really solving some of those problems about what that user experience is like. And the link rot. The link rot is fascinating. I had no idea what that meant. Essentially, you create an access URL, and the publisher changes it, doesn't tell anyone, and it stops working for everybody. And the user's trying to log in, and it could be any one of those other factors. So link rot still happens. What I think has happened, and what OpenAthens, we'll talk about OpenAthens Unpacked, we've got some services in place that actually shine on a light. So that problem has gone away, solve it faster. Fine, good. OpenAthens, so that's 2014. OpenAthens is still quite complicated, it still needs to be unpacked. I'm sharing a couple of slides put together by somebody in my team who was just like, okay, Jon, I'm new, I'm trying to understand what you do. Just look at all this stuff that we've got. SP for IDP, Jon, what does that even mean? Managed proxy, managed plus. Just to get that user to the digital resources, OpenAthens is actually a composite of many, many different little micro features, if you like. And she said to me, Jon, I've been here a year, this is how I feel. I said, I've been here 10 years, how do you think I feel? So, but that was a really, really important point. And actually one of the things that we strive to do is to keep things simple. So accessing content should be easy and pain-free. Again, I'm referencing the word of Seamless Access there. You shouldn't have to remember so many passwords. It should be simple. And actually, one of the things that really works for the team at OpenAthens is this concept of, what's a hammer for? It's for putting up pictures. So if I've got that right. Anyway, the point is, we are part of that ecosystem that delivers individuals the information that they need, that quality, curated information that they need. That's part of the process. That's kind of the why of OpenAthens. And what we've tried to simplify it down is for students and researchers to be able to access the knowledge they need from wherever they are in the world. So that's a mantra within the team. Quite a big team. We've certainly grown in the last 10 years, but everybody in the team should be able to articulate that quite clearly. So now I'm going to start talking about unpacking some of the services we think that support that. So some of it's going to be a bit sort of not unpacking, it's actually washing our dirty laundry to a certain extent. This is one of the most used OpenAthens pages. So on openathens.net, it's our compatible provider page. You would not believe the emails that went around internally about what we should call this page. I mean, it was, you know, oh, compatible providers, what does that even mean? Very, very good question. So you need to read through that. And actually, this is that body of knowledge that exists that OpenAthens connects to. Okay? If you go to this page, you'll see there's 12,000 resources that we can access to. We provide access to getting the users to that content. But what's important here is we work with different federation suppliers, in common, UK Access Management. Very, very, very different who manage a whole corpus of body of resources. We also manage a proxy as well. That's quite an important piece. I'm actually just going to play I promise it's only 30 seconds, a 30-second video that kind of explains what OpenAthens is. No, you can't hear the volume. Essentially, it's saying that we're a hybrid solution. It covers different authentication models. We specialize in SAML, that secure access language, that technical language, that's our specialty. But we also run a managed proxy, very similar to easy proxy. But we have that within a single solution. So I won't, it's 30 seconds, very nice video by the person who, that was created by the person who's massaging their temples. So within that, within OpenAthens, we have the ability to see who, not who individually is, but we can see which resources, we can see the trends of which resources are being used and where they are coming from in the world. So, a huge plethora of resources, we can actually give some insight to which ones are being used. This is the SAML piece. Essentially, Federated Access Management, or SAML, is a complicated term. It's showing people bouncing from place to place. You authenticate locally. The authentication is done by the institution. You authorize globally. So you get authenticated at the platform, and then you bounce back to the publisher, who will then say you're allowed to come in. You're not on the list, you can't come in. You're on the list, but you don't have the appropriate credentials or rights, then you can't come in. So that's SAML. Proxy is very different. Proxy is just really a URL syntax. And I've shared this because if you look at the bottom slide, so 2018, we only had 872 proxy resources. By 25, that's grown to 3,670. So we know that users, customers, librarians still want to use that proxy experience. We don't have a direct transactional relationship or commercial relationship with those proxy publishers. So it's quite, we reach out, something breaks, we reach out, and we try and fix it. A few pages where we see what's going on. There's a resource status page for OpenAthens. If a resource breaks, we'll let people know. Working with the publishers to make sure that we're shining a light on things when they break. That link drop still happens, but we want people to be aware. We have a status page that shows all the different aspects of the service, is what's running. Again, if some of those break, the end user will still be able to get to the digital resources. Okay? There's only a couple of services which will be fundamental to that user experience. We have an OpenAthens listserv. This is fantastic. This is one of my favorite things that's happened. There's a community of about 800 librarians now. So a librarian in the north of England can say, I've got a problem with this resource. What are you going to do? Someone in North America will pick that up. It's usually Russell Palmer from Galileo. He's not here, but thank you, Russell. He'll say, these are the options. We tried that. Someone in Australia will try that, fix it, and by the time that librarian from the UK is back at his desk, that problem has been solved. So talking about that community, that ecosystem that I referenced earlier, this is kind of one of the most important unpacked parts of OpenAthens, the community working to solve the access problem, to solve that link drop, essentially. Number one topic recently, the sort of stuff that they discuss, anonymizing personal identifiable information for SSA. So it can get quite technical, but it's really good. It's there. If you want to go technical, that community is there for you. Just an example of some of the what our service desk spends most of its time doing. You saw that rise in the proxy numbers from 900 to 3,000. Our team spend a lot of its time trying to firefight and triage those access problems with the proxy. Then it's federated resources, and then it's other problems within this administrative area of OpenAthens. Back to what the librarian at the University of Winchester said to me, work better with publishers, and that's one of the things that our service and support desk try to do. So that's the why. Students and researchers accessing knowledge they need, and we make that a reality by removing barriers to knowledge. So that's secure remote access. We try and remove the technical complexity for publishers. That is really, really difficult. We fall short, I acknowledge we fall short a lot in terms of reducing that technical complexity, but that's the goal, that's the drive, that's our aim. And we want to make the journey easy. And again, I've said it twice, I'll say it a third time. Seek out the work of Seamless Access Organisation. You know, they've got some really interesting information on how that all works. Just quickly looking forward to the future. OpenAthens is 30 next year. We've got some exciting, I think it's exciting product development coming out next year. It's about making the product easier and simpler to use. So we've had a lot of conversations with users recently, mainly schools in the UK for now, because of our relationship with GIST. And they say, do you know, we don't actually understand what you're talking about. Which is a bit of a shock, but that we can change our language and we can make that work. If we can evolve the product to meet the needs of those people who don't spend their time worrying about access management, I think we'll be doing a good thing. Yeah, so Access Lab, that's our event, 2025. And also, this is the final slide, and it's just a reflection on that conversation I had with the librarian at the University of Winchester. We're also trying to set the standard of what good looks like for a user experience on site. So we've 6 years ago, we launched a user experience award where publishers bring to us the work that they've done about streamlining that on-site experience. And this year, the winner was the Cambridge University Press and Research Direction. We've had 5 winners, and each one of the winners is able to evidence the work that they've done in understanding that user journey, breaking it down into small components, and then delivering something new on their websites. So we'll have to see. That's it, that's 15 minutes. So I've got 3 or 4 minutes for questions, which I'm happy to take. Anyone has any?